So here's a little thought experiment. Imagine that I spent a lot of time making a gift for you, or spent a lot of time shopping for it, and I wrapped it up and gave it to you with a great deal of intention, and then you ended up stepping on it or throwing it out. How do you think that would make me feel? Well, that's essentially the idea behind caring for creation. God has given us this beautiful and gracious gift, and it's up to us to care for it and to respect it and to reverence it for the gift that it is.
When we care for the environment, we care for the bounty of the Lord. And that bounty is given to every one of us, not just some of us, but every one of us to enjoy and to sustain our needs.
The support system of human life. That's what the environment turns out to be. It's what produces food, the air to breathe, the water or the rain to fall into water. Our life is so bound with creation that we're bound to respect it if it is also to serve us.
Because creation is a gift from God, we're asked to steward it. The book of Genesis asks us to keep and till the natural world. And sadly, we've done a very good job tilling it, but not such a great job keeping it.
When creation suffers, it hurts most the poorest of people. Poor people generally have to depend so much more on the water, on the climate, because that's how they make their livings. They are very vulnerable to climate change. Think about farmers. If there is a 2 or 3 degrees increase in temperature, then people cannot grow the same thing in the same area. So the care for creation translates directly into the care for our brothers and sisters.
Laudato Si calls all of us to care for the natural world. Now the call and how we live it out depends on who we are. If we're a young person, it may mean something as simple as recycling or consuming less. If we're an adult, it may mean making decisions in our corporation and at our workplace that affect the environment in a more positive way, and especially making decisions that take into account the needs of the poor.
Caring for creation, it calls for a certain kind of a unity or reciprocal relationship between man and his environment. We receive the earth as a garden. It will be very unfair if we pass on the earth as a wilderness.
Esto es que ha sido parte del lago Popó. Este lugar estaba cubierto de 3 metros de agua más o menos, hasta que vemos hoy en el día que no hay nada de espejo de agua, todo ha quedado.
Lake Popo was the second largest lake in Bolivia after Lake Titicaca, and Lake Popo has now disappeared. Bolivia, on the continent of South America, is the poorest. It has the highest indigenous population, and unfortunately within that population, it has the highest rank, highest statistics of poverty and inequality.
Los peces que quedaron en el lodo y finalmente ahí ha perecido todo. Sin embargo, el día de hoy vemos que estamos en un lugar salitrosa, pero como ex pescadores estamos aquí vivos. Tenemos desastre natural. No hay lluvia a veces hay helada. Entonces nos friegan nuestras siembras. Entonces no vamos a tener cosecha. Hay otros países industrializados que tienen fábricas tremendas que contaminan el ambiente, deben ver también para poder buscar alternativas de solución. No podemos seguir provocando hasta la destrucción de la naturaleza.
Bolivia only contributes to 0.04% of global emissions. So their footprint in contributing to climate change is very, very minimal.
Este año CRS nos ayudó, hace llegar a nuestro domicilio, llega por cañería. O consumo humano sí tenemos hoy, pero para el ganado igual no hay agua.
Un 93% viene agua de fuente superficial y un 7% viene agua de fuente subterránea, ¿no? Las fuentes superficiales vienen de las cuencas, precipitaciones de lluvia, descubrimientos de glaciares. Los glaciares en nuestra región están en la región tropical del globo terráqueo, ¿no? Entonces, por el calentamiento global que se da, tienden a desaparecer, ¿no? Por el incremento de temperatura. Existen todavía algunos glaciares, ¿no? Pensamos unas decenas de años más que van a ir también desapareciendo, ¿no?
Pachamama es nuestra tierra donde estamos nosotros y donde vivimos. Y la Pachamama es cuidar nuestra tierra y de acuerdo a nuestros usos y costumbres.
So the Pachamama is also that you give and then you take. At the inaugurations for our water system project, there is always a moment where there is a recognition of Pachamama and giving back.
Este es mi bote donde yo he trabajado, me ha dado sustento para la alimentación. Nuestros abuelos, nuestros papás seguro han sobrevivido y nosotros estamos afrontando en ese sentido para poder sobrevivir, pero en condiciones con desventajas enormes, cosa que podemos sobrevivir. No había que morir, había que luchar en la vida.
The indigenous of Bolivia are not contributing to climate change. They don't drive cars. They don't fly in airplanes. They don't run factories. But they are the ones that are suffering the most. I think that the way that they approach their life is really a testament to the human will.
We're down by 4 points. We're on our own 3-yard line. We've got 30 seconds left and no timeouts.
What happens when nothing is done to stop climate change? Well, the Gulf Coast of Louisiana is a pretty good example of it. Here, every hour, about a football field of land is lost to rising sea levels. While the oil and gas industry has been an economic life giver to this region, it's also the reason that life here may soon be impossible. Welcome to Dulac, a town in the indigenous Houma Nation territory. It sits at 3 feet above sea level, but with the Gulf set to rise by more than 4 feet by the year 2100, all this will soon be underwater.
It used to be further this way, but now it's all washed off, you know, like where the pylons and everything else over there, that was all ground here.
This entire area used to be marshland, which helped slow down hurricanes. But as gas companies began to dig more and more canals, salty seawater started seeping in, killing the wetlands. To date, coastal Louisiana has lost 1/4 of its land since the 1930s. Are you at all concerned that Dulac will one day look like this?
Oh yeah.
When I was younger, this used to be all land. The little canal we come through, that was just a ditch. And now we can float a boat through it. I might not be here, maybe 20, 30 years from here from now. The Gulf of Mexico is going to be in Dulac.
I think just the earth is just trying to defend itself from a virus. We're destroying the earth by digging up the oil and the coal, it's making it more sick.
So this area here, Shellbank Bayou, is one of the last examples of a Tupelo cypress swamp. All of these trees are not reproducing. So it's an example of what this land used to look like many years ago.
Katya and Eric are part of Gulf South Rising, an initiative of climate justice activists who work with frontline communities here, those most affected by climate change.
So here we're leaving Shellbank Bayou and going out onto Lake Maurepas, which is a brackish water lake. And this is an area where you can really see the saltwater intrusion. You'll start to see a lot of the bald cypress trees that are under the saltwater have been eaten away by the saltwater.
Eric, what about you? How does it feel to be out here?
That saddens me, and it makes you realize that, like, we are the last generation that will see this. Like, my children will never get to see half of this.
Eric introduced us to his cousin Sean. They both live in Slidell, a frontline community that completely flooded out during Hurricane Katrina and is also at risk of soon disappearing. But you lived in this area for how long?
My whole life, 27 years. But this here is my grandmother's house, right over here.
How tall is that now?
8 feet. They're going up 8 feet.
And before, just on the ground?
Yeah, before it was on the ground.
House raising costs tens of thousands of dollars, which many residents have to pay out of pocket if they're not lucky enough to get a state grant.
I think we're looking at mass relocation, especially of unique communities, long-standing Creole communities, Native American communities. We're looking at mass relocation, for sure.
Colette and Gulf South Rising are fighting for climate justice in what often feels like a losing battle. But for many communities at risk, it's the only chance they've got.
We cannot sustain extracting oil and gas. We just can't sustain it. It's sinking the land in South Louisiana. It's accelerating climate change. We can't keep doing it. I think the people who are being impacted have great ideas. Maybe it's just time for us to listen.
On the sides of the island, we are losing land there. It's during the strong winds and in particular the tropical cyclones when they occur. We are continuously being flooded, and also the flooding has actually increased in frequency. In the 1980s, we normally see it in February or January. But now we can actually see it November, December, Jan, Feb, March. It's about half the year we can actually see these high tides flooding our land.
We still have the Tuvalu concept that land is our mother, and we can build and stand on the land and be safe if the land can look after us and we look after the land. So purchasing this land is for us to invest our long vision of establishment, and especially to accommodate the needs of the migrants from Tuvalu because of the global warming. Here in New Zealand, in 60 years' time, probably the children won't be able to speak the language. And it is our role now We teach the Sunday school children with the language to make sure that our culture, our language, our identity as Tuvaluan, even if Tuvalu disappears in 50 years, but we want to maintain our identity as Tuvaluans wherever we travel.
We don't want to continue walk on the sea, to have our feet being wet. We want to walk on dry land.